Welcome back. So this piece is a piece of spalted maple. It was pretty punky, and I didn't show the dye stabilizing part. I know I need to get better doing that, but being in dogs in here eating. Anyway, the reason why I didn't record that part is most of the time when I'm doing these videos, I'll end up with like 2 hours of footage, and it's hard enough just trying to get 2 hours down to 15 minutes. That way you don't sit there and have to watch a 30-minute video to see it all. So this is what it is. It's Alumilite Amazing Clear Cast Plus. I had to do 2 pours. I thought I had it full enough, but it being that thick, after I cranked the pressure down to it, it shoved it down, and there's a void down here in the bottom. So I went and did another pour on top, which you won't be able to tell the difference when I'm done with it, because that void is somewhere down in here, and it's just a angled piece up here on the top. So there'll be a little bit on the top, and there'll be a fill down here on the bottom. But I stabilized it with blue resin from Shed Life S.O.S 3.0 stabilizing resin. Pretty good stuff. It doesn't bubble up like the other stuff, and it's got a pretty long shelf life. So I based it off 5 inches. So I got to mark the center hole, drill it out for the worm screw, turn a tenon, and flip it around and get to going. Here I'm just marking the center of it, that way I can drill the hole for the worm screw, and then centering the bottom so I know where to bring the tailstock up to. Apparently I didn't screw the hole deep enough, because it just would not go in. I ended up bringing out the belt. If you ever have something stuck that won't come undone, you can use something like this, and it gives you a little bit of extra leverage. But I drilled it out, came back, and got it back on there in the worm screw. And this stuff, for it to be as punky as it was, when I finally got down to the meat of the wood, it was just hard as a rock, especially for it being maple. And here I'm just checking to see how much further I've got to go. I've said time and time again, it's a good idea to stop and check your stuff just to see how it's looking, make sure there's no cracks, see how it's coming along. And you'll see me change carbides a few times doing this. I thought it was carbides, but every single one of them, even the ones that were freshly sharpened, they were still having a hard time. This piece right here came up with the idea. Just took a leftover scrap piece of wood that was a tenon, and I marked on the wide spot a place for the size of the mortise and a size of the tenon. Just have a nail in the center to stick it where your tailstock stuck into it, and spin it around, and it marks it perfectly. And this is just a diamond carbide, and I'll use it to shape my tenon or my mortise if I'm doing that. Works pretty good. Sometimes I'll use a skew, sometimes I'll use this. Just kind of depends on how far away it is or what kind of area I've got to get into. Here I'm just trying to use my Carter & Sons bowl gouge on taking the epoxy off. I know some people can do it. They do it a lot with Total Boat. Alumilite, I don't know if it's because it's softer, but it really wants to dig in, and the epoxy wants to blow out and chip out, and not very pleasant. So I swapped back over to my carbides. This little carbide that I made, it's a 8.6 millimeter, I believe, and it's really small, but dang if it don't do some work. I don't know if it's just because it's a small surface area that it's trying to cut, but I mean, it does great. When I started doing the end, I had to be very gentle. I don't have a center steady, so being that far away from the headstock, it creates a lot more tension on it. It's got more leverage being that far away, and you can easily pop one out of the chuck being that far away. It's always fun to sit there and watch the lady whenever I get to doing this part, seeing what she's doing behind my back. Normally she's in her chair, but I got the wood stove going and she likes the warmth, so she sits over there by it and gets warmed up. I need to get me a windshield wiper made up for that new piece of plexiglass I got over the camera to keep stuff from sticking to the plexiglass now. It's not as bad as having all those ribbons up on it as it was before, but so what I did was I started on the end of it, I hollowed it out a little bit, and then I came back and started shaping further down. The more meat that you have towards the chuck, the less likely it's to fail or go wrong. So I'll work my way back towards the chuck as I go to prevent failures. I mean, you can have a failure, but less likely to do it this way, especially not having a center steady. And here I'm using the skew just to kind of round it over. Using carbides, you can't really get a good clean cut, especially as hard as that crap was. I mean, it was, you could kind of tell, but the wood was actually ribbons, kind of like epoxy was. And normally when it's punky, it's not supposed to do that, but being stabilized, it was probably more stabilizing resin that had hardened inside of there than it was actually wood. And this thing, it was actually blue as the end piece where the epoxy is on the outside when I stabilized it. I don't know how in the world this thing turned green in the colors that it did. I mean, I'm not complaining because it's unique, it's different, and I mean, I like it actually. But it turned green and a little bit of lime green. It was weird. Some turquoise, some blue in there, just a little bit. I don't know. It's always fun what you get out of stuff sometimes. And here I'm using the diamond carbide again just to kind of remove more material. That way I can go ahead and part this thing off. Like I said, this thing, I mean, it's got a lot of uses in it. Being an itty bitty tip on there, it can really take a lot of material off. This is just a Robert Sorby little parting tool that I got. It's a smaller one. I should have got a bigger one, but it real handy. I didn't go through all the sanding process of this thing. I mean, that's just boring. I hate doing it myself. And being that it was stabilized, I just went ahead and used all regular sheets of sandpaper instead of the sanding discs. And here I'm just cleaning it off with denatured alcohol, getting any kind of dust or whatever might be still on there, and then I'm going to go over it with some Mylans and seal it all in. I didn't use sanding paste because I don't want to compromise spraying lacquer on there. But you can tell this thing, I mean, it's just crazy looking. It's one of those things where 1 + 1 is supposed to equal 2. Well, 1 + 1 equaled Z. And I mean, you can really see how it came out once this Mylons goes on there. But once I get through lacquering it, at the end where I post the pictures of it, you'll really see. But yeah, this thing was, I don't know, I like it though. I like it a lot. And if you want to see how I do my finishing process, I'll post a little link up here in the top right corner of how I go through all that. It's just such a lengthy process. I don't put it on my videos because I'd rather give more meat of the video to dedicated to this instead of spraying lacquer and going through all the wet sanding process. I mean, it takes me about 3 hours per piece to wet sand and buff, so that's why I don't add it in all these pieces.